Good evening, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Welcome to another incredible webinar from the Misgav Institute for National Security. The Misgav Institute for National Security is a leading policy and research center dedicated to ensuring a strong, resilient, and thriving Israel, integrated into a peaceful and prosperous Middle East in the spirit of the Abraham Accords. You can visit us at www.misgavins.org. You can follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, join our Telegram and our WhatsApp groups, and stay tuned. We have a number of incredible events and webinars coming up. And now, without further ado, our Misgav Institute Senior Fellow, Fleur Hassan-Nahoum.
So good evening, good morning, everyone. And it's really wonderful for me to be hosting my first Misgav Institute webinar. And it's a very, very special webinar because amongst all of the upheaval and amongst all the negativity in the region at the moment, and this constant battle that we're involved in, I think it's really important to look ahead, look forward, and look to see how we can make the region better. We've been very involved in the last few years in the Abraham Accords, both myself and Asher Fredman, and I'm very happy to say that with us this evening are two incredible peace activists from the Arab world. My very good friend Loi Al Sharif, who is an Arab peace activist, a linguist, a scholar. He's joining us from Abu Dhabi. And my good friend Rowan Osman, a Syrian-Lebanese peace activist and founder of the organization called Arabs Ask. And now I wanted to start with my own little intro of how I came to understand how education is really shaping the minds in the region and how we can actually find a little light at the end of the tunnel with certain countries that are making great efforts to de-radicalize their educational system. For me, the journey began a number of years ago when I took my position as Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem, and I realized that in East Jerusalem, about 90% of the kids there are being educated with the Palestinian Authority schoolbook. And of course, I didn't really understand what that meant. And I started talking both to experts on education and to young people who had been educated within that system and who were facing a situation where there was little or no opportunity because apart from many other issues that we'll talk about in a minute, they didn't learn Hebrew. And so very deliberately, the Palestinian Authority didn't want to teach these kids in East Jerusalem Hebrew so that they wouldn't be able to normalize, get a good job, and somehow integrate. And so then I went into the actual curriculum and I started seeing a lot of examples of hatred, of complete ignorance, or at least ignoring the fact that Israel exists. And at that point, I realized that if we are going to be talking about a new era of peace in the region, then we need to talk about how young minds are being shaped in the region, and especially right here in Israel and in the Palestinian Authority territories and in our very own East Jerusalem, which is of course part of Israel. I was disturbed to find out that the same curriculum that has been taught in Gaza is also being taught in East Jerusalem and parts of Judea and Samaria or the West Bank. And so this is a situation that we currently have in Israel. But on the very positive side, in the last 10 years, the Emiratis have made great efforts to take out any type of hatred or radical education from their curriculum. And 2 years ago, through many efforts of many good friends and colleagues and ourselves, the Emirati curriculum now includes Holocaust education. In Saudi Arabia, in the last 3 years, the worst examples of hate speech and of the different anti-Jewish or anti-Israel rhetoric has been taken out of the curriculum. And I'm pleased to say that we're looking at a new era of peace, looking forward to a new era of peace with Saudi Arabia. And so what the bottom line here is that if we want to educate a new generation in peace, in coexistence in this region, it all starts from de-radicalizing the educational system, but not just the media and rhetoric in general. And this is a lesson not just for our region, but of course, for many, many other regions in the world. And so I'm very honored that my two friends, Loay and Rawan, are with us because they themselves were radical at some point, and they themselves, through painful journey, de-radicalized from their thinking. And so I don't think there's anybody better to speak to us about reverse engineering the problem and coming up with a solution than my dear friends Loay and Rowan. And I want to just add one more thing before I start the conversation with them. I had a good friend of mine also joining, Rajai Abu Sayer, who is a native of East Jerusalem and who himself went through the East Jerusalem curriculum and has become an activist in trying to get rid of the curriculum. Unfortunately, Rajai suffered threats about this webinar from many people around him, and he had to pull out at the last minute. But I pray for the time when Rajai's presence in a webinar about de-radicalizing and looking forward to a new region is not something he gets threatened for. So on that note, Loay, let's start with you. I've known you since 2020, since right at the beginning of the Abraham Accords. I want to also say that Loay's scholarship is not just scholarly on Islam, but he actually gives a better shiur than most Jews that I know about Judaism. So Loay, just a little bit tell us of how you started this journey and how you got out of the thinking that you grew up with.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Fleur. Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone who's attending. Thank you for attending. And I'm so happy that Rawan is here with me in this amazing panel. And let me tell you how it all started, Fleur. I was raised a religious Muslim, and I was born and raised in Saudi Arabia. Honestly, it's like I always felt that I had this kind of strong feeling inside me to search for God and to try to please Him and to have this. I still have this feeling, of course, but it changed from one way to another, to a better one. So when I was taught in school that we should hate, unfortunately, that was like in late 1990s or so. And hopefully now I have to mention this, to be very honest, Fleur, that education system in Saudi Arabia is greatly improved. The Crown Prince did a great job in de-radicalizing all of the materials and promoting the moderate Islam that we all believe in.
Absolutely.
But I remember that, for example, that I received some, by the way, my family is very liberal, even in the 90s. My family are very liberal, but education and media are the outlets that radicalize people. So I remember that in school when we were told that we should never take Jews and Christians as friends, that the Jews are the fierce enemies of the believers. I took this so seriously and I believed in that. So I hated Jews from all my heart and I didn't have any Jewish friends. So I thought that this is to please God, to hate Jews and Christians as well. But you come first. Jews come first and then Christians. So I took it very seriously, and I was a very devout Muslim, by the way. I was very, just for you to know, Fleur, in the times of forums at that time, Yahoo Chat and stuff, there was no Twitter and stuff. I used to engage with people from different parts of the world. I even authored 10 small booklets about Islam and introducing Islam to non-Muslims. I know this might be shocking to so many, but I was like 18, 19, 20. I memorized the whole Quran in a year. And I read the 6 books of the hadith. We call them Al-Kutub al-Sitta, Al-Bukhari, Muslim, Tirmidhi, Nasai, Ibn Dawud, Ibn Majah. So I was like very interested in this, but I always felt that there was something, there was hate, great hate in my heart. So I decided to step back a bit but not in a way that would de-radicalize me. So, but just step back a bit because, you know, this hate consumes you.
Yeah.
But the real change happened in 2010 when I decided to learn French, and I registered in something called a homestay program in Paris in France, and I traveled to France. And by coincidence, by the way, the family that I lived with in a homestay program was a Jewish family, and that was my first encounter. And this is why, Fleur, I always say first encounters matter. First encounters matter. So that was the first encounter with a Jewish family. And to cut the long story short, all I knew about Judaism is from the adversaries of the Jewish people, the Muslim scholars who wrote strenuously against the Jews. The book of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, one of my favorite books. By the way, I put the cover that I owned. I got the book from Egypt when I was 20. And I put the cover of the book. I still have the book in my library. I put the cover of it on X, and that was a great bad influence in my life. So when you learn from the source, I fell in love with the biblical history and with Judaism, and I found the connection, the missing dots that many Muslims unfortunately do not find when it comes to Judaism. And that's it, 14 years ago, and still going. And the greatest change that I had, to be very honest, Fleur, is the part of expunging hate. I tell my fellow Muslims, I'm not asking you to abandon anything in your faith, but only one thing you have to abandon, and you have to admit that it is there. If you really want to be sincere in your change, there is a part of hate that you need to take away from. By the way, Fleur, the most beautiful quotes that I say on social media are Rachel's. Rachel is the French mother. Even when I say to people that, when I told Rachel, when we had this conversation, I told her, Rachel, we have to hate in the sake of God. Rawan understands this. Al-bughd fillah, to hate for the sake of God. We were told this. You have to hate for the sake of God. She told me, Loay, and this is a very powerful message. She told me, Loay, the Torah, you know how much it speaks about the Egyptians and what God did to Egyptians, and how God said, I will smite with my hands the Egyptians, and I will do this and I will do that. She said, fast forward, the Torah itself, when it told the children of Israel about dealing with other people, especially the Egyptians and the Edomites, God told them in biblical Hebrew, Lo teta'av mitzri, ki ger hayita be'artso. You should never hate an Egyptian because you are foreigners in their lands. So lo teta'av, it's a very ancient, it's a very biblical Hebrew word, means do not hate. You should never hate. Enmity can happen between the children of God, but it's temporarily. There is nothing called eternal enmity. And that was like, oh my God, this is my God. This is the God that I believe in. I understand there could be some sort of enmity between Jews and Muslims, or Arabs and Israelis sometime in history, but it's not eternal. So no enmity is eternal. And the teachings that most of the things that I say, by the way, I echo Rachel's words, because Rachel, she is Moroccan, French, Yemeni origin. So she understands Islam, she understands the culture very well. And that was the point of change. And I believe everything starts with education, especially when it comes to de-radicalization, Fleur.
So, Loy, that was your aha moment when you actually met a Jewish family. But how do you then go about expunging hate, something that is so kind of learned for so many years? It's easy to say, but you must have been deliberate about it.
Yes. So I always say, Rachel, I always say, Fleur, I'm sorry, Rachel.
It's a compliment.
I always say, Fleur, that the strongest people, I believe, why do I believe that myself, Rawan, and even another guy named Loay Ahmed, we are so strong? Because those who've been in the darkness and conquered it and overcome it with knowledge are the strongest. So I expunged hate with knowledge. So I said, I have to be very honest with myself. Teachings that teach hate or eternal enmity are wrong. Simple, basic, and elementary. You have to put this straightforward. If you are hesitant, I'll be very honest with you, Fleur. I could have just stayed in the shadows or just be with everyone else. Do not talk about these matters. Let's just keep hating like everyone. Follow the herd. It's very hard. It's very caché to stand out and say, no, I'm not thinking this way. I'm thinking differently. Because I always told you I've been searching for God, and I believe that this search led me to expunging this hate with knowledge. I always say, Fleur, it's with knowledge, not with, oh, I love now Israel or I love Judaism. No, no, it's with knowledge. And this is why I keep posting on my Twitter, on my Instagram, things related to history, biblical history, reminding Muslims that they are named after Jewish prophets, that they despise their descendants now. This resonates to people. It might not resonate in the first sight. They might insult you. Oh, what King David has to do with this Ashkenazi Fleur or with this people of Israel or with this Sephardic? I'm sorry, I think you're Sephardic, not just, but I'm just saying that people do not relate.
Yes.
So I strenuously stress that no, it is related, because the current state or the current state of Israel, the modern state, is the same Israel, is the same extended heritage of Israel that was there for 3,000 years. How? Same language, same rituals, same festivals, same land, same beliefs. Even if you're talking about rabbinic Judaism, it is the extension of the ancient Judaism.
Thank you so much, Loay. And I want to remind everyone, if you have questions that we'll address at the end, please put them in the Q&A section. Now, you and Rowan actually have a lot in common about that aha moment, because Rowan, if I'm not wrong, yours also happened in France. Tell us a little bit about how you're here in Israel right now, and a little bit about your journey from having grown up in the Bekaa Valley, neighbors of ours, as a Hezbollah-loving, Israel-hating young woman, and that journey, like Loay's, out of that hatred.
Thanks a lot, Fleur. It's an honor to be here with you. I'm happy to see Loay again. Indeed, we have a lot in common, but not everything. So I should highlight that I never was a radical. I grew up in Lebanon, and in a liberal middle class. Everybody was secular. Everybody celebrated Christian and Muslim holidays together. Although both my parents are Muslims, one Shia, one Sunni, we always had a Christmas tree because it was something happy for the kids. Nevertheless, and I believe I gave you the first interview. It was my first time in Israel. I had the honor. This is how our friendship started.
It was my honor, Rowan.
Thanks. That's a compliment, especially coming from you. And with you, I decided to call a spade a spade. I was an anti-Semite. Today, I'm a recovered anti-Semite. So my method is different to Loay's. I don't teach anybody. I don't think, I don't want to be a teacher. I'm just showing a different model. And I own my story, and I do what I think is the right thing to do. Yes, by chance, as I was in my 20s, I moved to France for a winemaking course for that year. And I landed in Strasbourg, 200 meters away from one of the biggest synagogues in the world. Up until then, and I was 26 years old, I had never seen a Jew. And as I told you, Fleur, and now I share with whoever joined us, and thank you for doing that, that I had a panic attack. And being the person I am, I'm feisty and confrontational, and I'm fearless. That was probably my first and my last panic attack. When I ran up to my room to wash my face to calm myself down, I was embarrassed. I felt like a fool. And I had to think, why? Why did I react this way? And I realized I panicked because for the first time in my life, I was sharing the same space with a Jew. And why did I hate a Jew? Although I was an atheist all my life, and I grew up in a relaxed environment, nothing to do with religion. And I have to say that by attending a French Catholic school all my life, I absorbed a different version of anti-Semitism. And to me, the Jews were those who killed baby Jesus, because it was a ritual at school before Easter every year. We watch a film, the same film about the Passions of the Christ. No, not Mel Gibson's. That didn't exist back then. It's another one that was just as graphic. It's the same. So for us children, the Jews had the chance to rescue, to save Jesus' life, and they didn't. And there's also the element, and that I have in common with Loay, the role of the media, the curriculum, even in Lebanon, what they instill in our collective consciousness, especially that the Israeli narrative is completely omitted from our consciousness in the Arab and Islamic worlds. So it was easy to believe that the Israelis are those who instigate wars and who are greedy, they're bloodthirsty, and they always want to grab more land, more land. So I believe that until I had the chance I had access to uncensored information in Europe, that opened my eyes. I realized we were brainwashed, and I personally felt compelled to do my due diligence, and by discovering the history of the Middle East, the formation of all these new countries, I realized that we have much more common with the Jews than with anyone in Northern Africa, for example. Not to make, it's not that I feel, or let's put it this way, I do realize how much I have in common with a Moroccan. We do share. We have hybrid identities. We have a lot in common. But the Jews are, to me, I'm a Levantine. They come from the same region. They are my peoples as well. And I'm in this process of admiration. I'm still in awe the more I discover about Judaism.
Well, I mean, I know your story. It's an incredible story. And it's interesting that you came from a secular perspective and Loay comes from a religious perspective. But let's try and think, I mean, we see the problem, and both of you in your spaces are doing as much as you can to de-radicalize and to educate. And we figured out that education is the key here. Also, we haven't spoken about the media and how we deal with that. But Loay, if you could give me 3 first steps to start de-radicalizing the region, we are, inshallah, please God, moving towards a new Middle East. With the help of God. We have huge challenges. We have a radical Iran and its proxies. And, from praising Hitler to denying the Holocaust, they're an exaggerated version, but it does have repercussions across the region. So if you could wave a magic wand through your experience, through your knowledge, through the things that you study, what would you advise the different governments in the region to start doing tomorrow?
So I'll also speak of from my personal experience, because
yes,
I believe what changed me can change so many, especially in the Gulf. Okay.
Yeah.
So the magic point, as you said. So first of all, first encounters. It's very important, Fleur.
Yeah.
Many of those who hate Jews, when we engage in Twitter spaces or we engage in conversations, you ask them, do you have any Jewish friend or do you have any Israeli friend? The answer is most of the time, no. So first encounters, very important. That could be in interchange programs, in programs that engage Israelis and Saudis, or Israelis and Arabs together. This is very important. The first encounter is something very important. Second, education. Unfortunately, I'm so deeply unfortunate that what we know about Judaism is not true. And also allow me to put this criticism also, to be very honest, Fleur. And even some Jews, they don't, how to say this, or some Israelis, when it comes to Judaism, they lack the understanding of showing their fellow Muslims or their fellow Arabs why they're attached to this land. To be very honest, I always say to my Israeli friends, left and right, that the connection the Israelis have to this land is biblical. It has to be, this answer has to be very clear to everyone, that if it wasn't biblical, if it wasn't for the Bible, then why Israel?
Why are we here? You're so right about many sectors of education in this country are very much lacking that connection. You're 100%
yeah,
correct.
So if I want to de-radicalize many people, I have to stress on this point, that Jews are home. where does the word Jew comes from? If I want to give you the 100% perfect answer, the word Jew comes from when Joshua bin Nun entered the land of Canaan, partitioned it. He gave a very big sector of the land to the fourth son of Jacob. His name was Judah. And those who lived in that part of the land, when the Babylonian exile took place, they were called the children of Israel. They were not called the Jews. So when they went to Babylonia and the Babylonians asked the Israelites, where you guys are coming from? They said, we come from Judah. We are the Jews. And there, at that time, at 586 BC, the word Jew became very familiar to the ears of those who lived in that period, because Jew comes from Judea, and Judea comes from Judah, the fourth son of Jacob, whom when this land was partitioned, was given by Joshua bin Nun. This is a very important aspect. So you ask a Muslim, well, do you believe in the Asbat? Al-Asbat were the 12 tribes of Israel. I know that some people, to be honest, Fleur, do not agree with the religious point of view that I engage with, but I know how my people think. I know how the people in the Gulf think, and this is the perfect approach. I know not everyone agree with it, but this is the perfect approach to get to the people with religion and with how deeply we are connected with the Jewish people. Ask people around you. You have so many Arabs named Yusuf. The word Yusuf or Yusuf or Yusuf in Arabic doesn't have a meaning in Arabic, but it has a meaning in Hebrew. It means God will increase. Many Arabs are named Gabriel, but they don't know that Gabriel, the man of God, is Hebrew. Even our ancestor Ismail, his name is Yishmael, God will hear. It's a Hebrew name. So the second thing is education. We need to learn Judaism and Hebrew from the source, not from the protocols of the elders of Zion, and not from Egyptian and Arab scholars who mar Judaism in their encyclopedias. Like there's a big encyclopedia called Judaism and Zionism by the late Abdul Wahab al-Masiri, may his memory be a blessing. He's an Egyptian scholar, but he marred so many things about Judaism and so many things about the Jews. And unfortunately, the masses would never know. So this is something very important. Education. And then media. The media exposure by showing collaborative works and stuff. So if I have this magic stick, I would do three things. First, encounters, education curricula by teaching people why Jews are not foreign colonialists or conquerors to the land of Israel, but they are indigenous. And the third thing is media work.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. And thank God we can actually look at examples in the region of people, like you said, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, of that de-radicalization going on. And I guess what we need to add to that is the background of the people of Israel, of the Jewish people, like you have. And, I wish you could give a lecture to young Jews all around the world. I think you're much more convincing than many rabbis. Oran, in the same question that I've asked Loay, if you could do three things, and of course, Loay's, expanded quite well on the three things, which I think are crucial. But from your perspective, as a secular Arab woman, what would you do? What do you think needs to be done right now in order to fight the radicalizers and de-radicalize, roll it back? You're on mute, dear.
And you're asking, Fleur, a question after October 7th. What the way Loay put it, the way he summarized it, that's exactly what we need. But for that to be introduced in any Arab country, we need a political decision. That's what MBS has done. And I should share I lived for 1.5 years in Riyadh, in Saudi Arabia, back in the days where the religious police would humiliate anybody if you forget your veil when it's 60 degrees outside. So having family and friends in Saudi, what I've been hearing in the last 2 years, it gives you hope.
Yeah,
it is possible, but it takes a courageous leader with a healthy vision for a future. That's what MBS is doing. That's what's been implemented in UAE, also in Morocco. But after October 7th, you're saying, what do we need? Well, we need the world to intervene. We need pressure on Arab countries to understand how this could possibly explode, anti-Semitism, leaving radicalization ignored or bubbling under the surface, led to an event such as October 7th and the misery. I was today on the borders with Gaza. It's ongoing. It did not stop. Some people forgot what happened or they got a bit detached. People are still suffering and dying on both sides. So I was asked once in the US, so what could we do? I don't know. You are the US government and you give a lot of aid, humanitarian aid in Islamic and Arab countries. I don't know. One way could be conditioned aid.
Well, 100%. I've been advocating for years that I'm not saying don't give money to UNRWA, which runs the network of the schools. I'm saying give them the money on condition that they de-radicalize the education system. And that seems very hard for a lot of countries. I don't understand why everybody gets stuck in this paradigm. It would change like this if the funding was at risk.
We're discussing the obvious. For us, it seems very clear. Today, unfortunately, like I'm in Israel as part of the first only women delegation, thanks to Elnet Global. And we're still discussing that women were sexually abused, sexually assaulted. And you're discussing this in the presence of their family members, people who have seen footage, who have listened to testimonies. To us, it seems obvious because Hamas filmed, Hamas shared. So why are you justifying or denying it took place? The solution is sometimes very, very easy. We have to diagnose the problem and try to solve it, and we need pressure. And the international community has the ability, they just need to be brave and say enough is enough because it's harming everybody in the region.
Absolutely, it's poisoning everybody. Rowan, you set up a platform. You're the founder of Arabs Ask, and you set that up precisely to answer those questions, misconceptions that Arabs have about Israel and Jews. How's that going?
It's going fantastic, by the way. I'm very lucky that a team believed in what I suggested and I pushed for it, but I'm pretty sure not everybody believed this is possible. Arabs won't engage with our content because you recall when I first met you, I told you I call a spade and I own my story. I don't identify as an Arab normally, coming from the Levant, but if you're gonna call me an Arab, then I'm an Arab Zionist, tall and proud, and the Jews are my people, and I will not accept the world or the way the world became after October 7th. And it's for us, especially mothers, to say no. What we've seen is horrific. So how do you counter Al Jazeera's narrative? Do we have such billions? No. They have professional anchors, trained, intelligent, pushing a toxic narrative.
Absolutely. Good.
Social media is our only way. And if Abu Ubaida of Al-Qassam Brigade can find his way through social media and become an influence on various platforms, so can we. This is why we decided to do this project. And these are reels. 15 seconds to 90 seconds. How much information can you pack? So this is why I also I'm honored that many academics, including the dean of our university, join our project, and they have fantastic ideas, but people, like the average people in the Arab world, are not interested in the 5 volumes you've written. It is sad, but it's true. You have to present something very basic, ABC. What does Al-Quds mean, Jerusalem? Or Jerusalem was never mentioned, not once in the Quran. Bnei Israel, these Jews are part, how do you know so much about them? Look in your Quran. So we started with ABC and the platform grew. We get bashed, we get a lot of negative comments, but we document all the positive comments, messages I get personally, thanking us from people living in Tehran, in Cairo, in Yemen, in Libya. And they tell me, I wish, or wait for it, the Muslims and Arabs living in New Zealand or in Canada. And I tell them, what are you afraid of? Speak up. And they tell me, yeah, but I have an uncle in Tehran, or I have, I don't know, my niece is still in Cairo. They're afraid. But I still believe that we can pave the way and encourage them, because if they remain silent, I'm afraid they're helping the oppressors, the aggressors, the assailants. You have to speak up, otherwise we're doomed. And I'm just going to add one point, and you elaborate on that if you want to expand. We've seen what's happening on campuses around the globe. The encampments are starting in Germany on Monday. There is nothing, even the president of the university at the Goethe University in Frankfurt could not stop it. This is insane. So how long are you going to wait until they take over the streets? ISIS flags were waved in northern Germany, in Amsterdam. This is insane.
Unfortunately, I like you, I feel like the world's turned upside down. And just to, you know, to underline your point about the silent majority, or the silent people who feel bullied or harassed, to speak out against hatred. That's all we're asking them to do. We're not asking everybody to become Zionists, but just take out that very poisonous hatred. And Elie Wiesel said, it's the opposite of hate is not love. The opposite of hate is indifference. And that really is and where we're at. And now we have a very engaged audience who are writing down some very good questions. So let's start. I'll do one each, okay? So two related, an anonymous attendee says, two related questions. Is de-radicalization in Gaza, Judea and Samaria even feasible, if not also done in the larger Arab world? And the second question by the same person, and if so, what specific measures in the education system taken by the Allies after World War II to denazify and demilitarize Germany and Japan should be implemented to affect said de-radicalization? So that's a really good question. How can we start? I mean, as we know, the radicalization that Hamas did, even the PA, because that's what the school system is, that's what the media is, that's the rhetoric in Arabic. And I have to add, it was an Oslo commitment by the Palestinian Authority, when the whole thing was split into area A, B, C, and all that, to take out radical rhetoric from curriculum and the media. They, of course, never complied with that. It just seems so kind of inbuilt to the regional conversation about Israel. We know why. We know that it's easy to blame Israel because then they don't have to deal with their own internal problems. We know that it's not all religiously oriented. There's very kind of insidious political agenda here. How do we even start with let's take Gaza. Let's say the war is over and we have some sort of clean slate. How do you start? How do you start doing like what the Allies did after the Second World War to denazify Germany? Loi.
First of all, you need to have a responsible power, Palestinian power, that would rule the Palestinians, who believe in peace with Israel, not temporarily peace, not Sulh al-Hudaybiyah, not something that would be for 10 years and then we were just waiting for the moment to throw the Jews. No. You need to have a Palestinian power, we call it authority, presidency, whatever you want to call it, that believes in peace with Israel, that looks to the Jewish people as indigenous to the land of Israel, and that they would live side by side. That would be the first thing. And then you start with the education. But as long as you have people like Hamas, by the way, I said it today, Fleur, and some people said, you're contradicting yourself. When I said today on Twitter or on X that a Palestinian state ruled by Hamas is a catastrophe to the Arab world and to the world.
Absolutely.
They said, then what about the stance of the UAE and the Arab world about the Palestinian state? No one would agree to a Palestinian state ruled by Hamas. Simple, basic, and elementary.
Absolutely not.
And we are not against the Palestinians to live in dignity and the Palestinian people as people. I have lots of good Palestinian friends who believe in peace with Israel. Unfortunately, they are not the majority. I'll be very honest with you.
And they're not in power. And they're not in power.
And they are not in power. There are, and I hope that they grow in number. But people like Hamas, PIJ, who really, listen to me, Fleur. The video that appeared today when they were calling the kids, or when they were calling the Israeli
The women, the young women, dogs.
yeah, they were calling them sabaya. Rawan speaks Arabic, but most of the people don't speak. You know, sabaya means concubine, and you know what they do with the concubine. So they really dehumanize Jews, and I know where that comes from. Listen to those who are recovered from darkness. They would tell you where that comes from and where that dehumanization has to stop. And those people cannot really fix the problem. So you need to have a Palestinian power or a presidency or an authority that believes in peace with Israel, and then you work with education. That would be the first thing if we have a clean slate, if you, as you say.
Thanks, Loy. I agree with you, and it's just disturbing what we had to see today. Okay, next question. Ron, I'm giving this one to you. Loy and Rowan have noted that their de-radicalization started with meeting Jews. So to start, for millions of Muslims who never meet Jews, how can de-radicalization happen? On social media, it seems Islamic accounts praising Hamas murderers outnumber voices such as Rowan and Loy's over 100 to 1. Is there a way to complete de-radicalization other than one person at a time? Rowan.
I understand why would someone think about it this way, because we are dramatically outnumbered. Also, look at the Jewish state. The Israelis are dramatically outnumbered. We can roll over and die, or we can roll our sleeves up and get to work. And believe me, what my story and Loay's story do resonate with people because it's different. It is exceptional. It is special. And I'm not saying it to brag. It is something different. It is attractive. So even those who bash us, who send us death threats, they are interested. They're following. And slowly...
They're engaged, you mean? They're fighting, so they kind of...
Slowly but surely, something is changing. And recently, you and I, Fleur, met an exceptional young man, Hamza Houedi, who managed to get out of Gaza. He gave me so much hope. When I met him, like everyone has been interviewing him, I had to go meet him, sit with him for hours, like, is he for real? And he gave me hope. He showed me a lot of footage. People have to understand, we have individual brains and we are held accountable individually because we have the capacity, the capability to think. So given the chance, even a random video that people stumble upon on social media can create a domino effect in their brain. The process could take 20 years, but it is possible. Otherwise, if you think about 1 billion Muslims, if they all hate the Jews, we have no chance. Let's leave. Let's move to Mars.
Well, I agree with you. And I agree with you about taking those moments and the people that are engaged. Obviously, they're interested in that conversation. But it just, and I'm sure there's a lot of bots out there as well. And I think it's pretty, there's some pretty insidious powers behind this who don't care about Jews or Muslims. And so we have to take all that. But, you know, it's very difficult when you're dealing with something called confirmation bias, which is essentially everything you see, even if you see something that is against everything you believe in, you will just somehow twist it to convince yourself that what you believe is so correct. And so I hope, I mean, you both are giving me a lot of hope. I want to go to another question here. Okay, this is interesting. How do we, and this is actually, Rowan, you live in Germany where many Syrian refugees have come in. So it's kind of relevant for you. How do we mass scale de-radicalize of people in Western countries, migrants and natives that have been radicalized, so that we don't end up with Islamist domination and Sharia and protect our values? I'm assuming this is from a European country that are concerned about the radicals in that country.
Perhaps frustrated as well, because it's been years that we're talking about it. I, as a Syrian, and perhaps I said it to you before, Fleur, when Angela Merkel said, "Wir schaffen das," opening her arms, welcoming the Syrians, as a Syrian, I was happy because the world let the Syrians down. And Bashar al-Assad so far got away with it.
Yeah.
I was happy because they needed an urgent solution, but this was not it. As a woman who lived a few years in Syria, I'm sorry, but the culture is infested with misogyny and anti-Semitism. I was extremely concerned. I moved to Europe with my child because I identify with Western values. Now, millions are invited in here. What was the plan? There was none. So the state, as gang rapes, for example, stories started emerging, anti-Semitic incidents. The state realized, oops, okay, we need a solution. And what did they do? They told them, you will receive a prison sentence. And of course, we start educating on the Holocaust and that the Jews are normal people. But was that effective? There are some people out there who know about the Holocaust and they're happy about it. So today in Europe, unfortunately, many countries woke up too late, but it seems that the recipe that works is deportation or telling them you would be deported. You can't torch a synagogue. You would risk being deported or losing your passport. Freedom of speech needs to be explained again, what freedom is. This has to be a political process.
I totally agree. I mean, otherwise they're in big, big trouble. Loi, this is a religious question, so I'm giving it to you, Rabbi Loi. If time permits, another question. For Muslims who believe Quran verses such as 929, 95, and 560 are relevant for all times, how can their minds be changed?
By telling people that they are not relevant to all times.
That's interesting.
That's how I accepted it. That's how if I still believe they are relevant to all times, I wouldn't be sitting with you here. Why? There's a verse that says never take Jews and Christians as friends. And there's a verse that says the fierce enemies of the believers are Jews. But if you put it in context that this happened in the 7th century for a certain context that was there and that's it. And I also refer to Rachel. She told me we cannot go to the Bible and say, well, there is slavery in the Torah and God says a slave has to obey his master. Let's go back to slavery. No, you cannot do this. Or you cannot put the enmity between the Hebrews and the Egyptians of that time and say it's applicable every time and everywhere. This is the most dangerous virus in the Islamic heritage. This word, صالح لكل زمان ومكان, applicable every time and everywhere. This is a virus.
So in other words, just keep it in the context of the history of the time.
And that's it.
And that's it. And just leave it there. Like the Crusaders, you can talk about Christians butchering many people around the world. That evolved, that moved on.
We moved on. May I use Loay's story as an example for I'm pretty sure it would be relevant for many people listening. See, Loay keeps referring to Rachel. So it was a single event in his life that changed his perception of the Jews, and it was one-on-one. But see, Loay became influential on social media, and this one experience, individual experience, had a ripple effect. So we can change through first or single encounters. This can be multiplied. Just do it, have some faith, and it'll work. Push that positive energy in the universe.
I mean, I agree, and this is why
I never thought in 2010, Rawan and Fleur, that I would be having 132,000 followers on Instagram or 200,000 followers on. If you tell me this in 2010, I say you're crazy. So, if you are honest in doing what you're doing, I believe God will make things work.
You know what's interesting, Loay? When they told you when you went to France you're going to live with a Jewish family, why did you not object? Why did you not ask to be changed?
Oh, he did.
Excuse me, who told you? Who told you I didn't object?
Did you try? Did you go to customer service and said, this is not what I signed up for?
No, I did something most terrible, and I'm going to make a video about it. I wrote an email to the school. By the way, the school's name is Accords School in Paris. I wrote an email to the school, and guess what? I still have the email.
Why did you put me with a Jewish family?
I still have the email that I politely asked for a Tunisian Moroccan family because I don't feel comfortable with the Jewish family. I'm not proud of this. I'm not proud of what
yes, but then at what point, when you're already living there with them, at what point do you start to kind of melt?
No, when I first saw the big Hamagen David, I was You know, Rawan said terrified. I was not terrified. I was a level beyond that. I was about to scream, really, because, you know, again, David, you remember the Egyptian TV series called Ra'fat al-Haqqan and the Mossad and the conspiracies, and then you see the music, and then you have so many things in your head that, oh my God, this is a Mossad house or so. So
And it's conscience engineering. That's what.
yeah,
That's
but
what's
the
happening.
first Shabbat, when the school told me, okay, we're gonna find you another family, and the first Shabbat I did with them, and I started to feel like, wow, they are saying the blessing before they eat. They wash their hands like us, and this is like the inner battle between the religious texts that tell you that Jews, for example, unfortunately, Fleur, we have a religious text that says that Jews are not fully monotheists because they believe that Ezra is the son of God. I know I'm how to say this. I'm very up and front with you, but so many people do not know. But the majority of Muslims believe that Jews say Ezra is the son of God, which makes them not. And of course, this is not true. This is the problem. It is not true.
Absolutely.
It is not
so
true.
that's why they turn us into non-monotheistic religion. That's interesting.
Exactly. And if you don't have the chutzpah or the audacity to say, well, I learned from Jews that this is not right, and this is wrong, you're not going to change. Look, change requires audacity, requires the jur'ah, that you get out of your comfort zone and say, this is wrong, and this exactly.
Courage, which you two have buckets of. Okay, one or two more questions before we finish. The Israeli, the Palestinians are raised on to believe to replace Israel, and it's created a lot of extremists ready to murder anyone who will lead another way. It is more dangerous than in other Arabic countries. It's not a coincidence that the only participant who revoked his talk is from East Jerusalem. So how can you turn history in a different direction?
That's for Rawan.
Start with you, Rowan.
How can you answer this? This is why I mentioned Hamza. I know that especially the Israelis who lost family members, I can feel their pain almost. I see their anger, especially when they're protesting against the government, and I tell them, it's not the time. It's not the time. You can't afford division. I understand where this is coming from, but I have to also remind them that, believe it or not, there are Palestinians who are not radical, who just want to live in peace like everybody else. Now, this does not excuse what's happening, because I still wonder, when will the Palestinians change their methods? Terrorism is not effective enough already. So these bright minds, do you remember Edward Said, his contribution? We see the domino effect in Colombia.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of investing their energy into developing a comprehensive plan, embarrass Israel, force them to accept something civilized, a solution, and mean it. And then I'll be the first one to support you. Stop resorting to terrorism. But at this moment, there are no magical solutions. It has to be a political decision, and the world has to help Israel. Arab countries such as UAE must help the Israelis.
I mean, I'm with you in the sense that when I think about the ideal situation in post-war Gaza, I do see a constellation with Americans, Emiratis, Saudis, because the Saudis and the Emiratis kicked out their Muslim Brotherhood many years ago. In Saudi, it's ongoing with the Wahhabis. They recognize what it seems the West haven't recognized yet, and that is the poison of Islamic fundamentalism. And it's really a shame. Okay, one last question. Thank you for this wonderful discussion, Loay and Rawan, some of the great heroes of this generation. I agree with that. My question is, apparently the Western world is reluctant to urge the Palestinians to apply the necessary reforms to discuss today. What can the moderate countries from the Arab world do to make a difference in this regard? I actually think not just what they can do, that they are the solution, in fact, the moderate Arab countries. So as two moderate Arabs in front of us, last word, each one of you, please.
Ladies first.
I'm going to tell you, look at this. I'm half Syrian, half Lebanese. I admit that I am a recovered anti-Semite. I stand by your side. I identify as Zionist. I speak anywhere, although I used to be an introvert. After October 7th, give me the mic. If there's 5,000 people, we are in a fight we did not choose, and it's a fight between modernity and savagery. And we have to make this choice because we owe it to the future generations. So be brave and stand your ground, and we will see our way out of this. Anybody with a sane brain will stand by your side, even if we're outnumbered. We will prevail together.
Amen, sister. Loay?
We are outnumbered, as Rawan says, but there is always something that would give you this power to keep doing what you're doing. What gives me power is I believe in the days of peace will come, the days that Prophet Isaiah said, Lo yasa goy el goy harib velo yilmidu'ud milhama. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation. They will learn war no more. And we are doing this for our region. I love my region so much. I love the Middle East. I believe it should be better than Europe. It should be the next Europe. And for this to happen, inshallah, with the help of God, for this to happen, Arabs and Israelis have to come together, Muslims and Jews, and of course, Muslims, Jews, and Christians and other faiths, but I'm focusing on Muslims and Jews because it's like Israel, have to come together. And we have to know that we are outnumbered, true, but this should give you a motivation to do things even better, inshallah.
Thank God for both of you. It's been such a tough week for us here in Israel. We had such horrible, news in so many ways this week. But you have both reminded me, and I think all of our audience, very captive audience, that there is always hope, that we have to outstretch our hand to moderate people, to people who want to see a brighter future for their children. And so, inshallah, we should merit, Bezrat Hashem, to see that future together with leaders like both of you. Thank you, Loi Alshareef. Thank you, Rowan Osman. And thank you all for joining us here at the Misgav Institute for National Security, and hope to see you very soon. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. God bless you.